this video, we will be discussing this amp again. I've made some previous videos about it that sort of failed. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be working on talking about this amp. This is Az. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. All right, go play. Go play. Okay. So in this video, we're going to be talking about this amp again. I call it the Bloodhorse. I don't know why I call it the Bloodhorse. I guess because of the red and it's kind of dark. I mean, it's got alligator skin on it. So I call it the Bloodhorse because I used to call it the Dark Horse, and I found out that Trainer has an amp called the Dark Horse. And so I said, well, I better call it something different. And I don't really necessarily like naming my amps, but sometimes I work with AI. And when I'm talking about various amplification work I've done, I have to specify exactly which amplifier it is. So for that reason, I've had to kind of go and name all of my amps. And it's not something I always like or think should be done, but whatever. So in this video, we're going to be discussing the pros, the cons, the good, the bad, the ugly. You know, what kind of went through to put this amp together. I do discuss a little bit about the variation from the Soldano design that I found that I've had to do on these amps. Maybe it's because of the Transformers, the specs of the Transformers, but I kind of touched on it for a second. I'd like to get into a little bit more about the design changes that I made to accommodate the tone of the amp based upon differences from the Rob Robinette page. And there are quite a few, and I'll just say briefly that it's basically I just kind of hybrided the Marshall or the Jose design, sort of one of the Jose designs at the beginning of the the first opening stages of this amp. So it's a little bit more like a Jose modded Marshall in the beginning than it is a Soldano. And I also had to put grid stoppers on the phase inverter, because one problem I was having with this amp is that it was having the too hot, too fast syndrome, meaning the amp sounded amazing, but it sounded amazing between 1 and 2, and anything above that was insanity. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted to be able to turn the master volume up and have it be a nice gradual increase for the volume to where, the insanity happens above noon on the dial, not between 1 and 2. So when I say too hot, too fast, I was chasing a lot of, intensity in this amp. And frankly, in all of the Soldano type builds that I've done, they get real mean real quick. And I was working on trying to find a gradualness to the gain buildup. And I put 47K grid stoppers on the phase inverter. That seemed to help tame things down a little bit. I may have changed the coupling cap in front of the phase inverter to something a little bit more narrow. We discuss putting in DC elevated heaters. I didn't get to the 64 volts that Rob Robinette shows, but I did achieve 38, and this amp became much, much quieter, and I was happy for that. And you get to hear a little bit of the tone at the end of the video. I whip out the 7-string, and it's just a room recording, but I kind of put the amp through some paces a little bit and crank it up and tweak it out, and you get to hear a few little things. And sorry, most of the playing's nothing but metal riffs and chugga chugga. I'll try not to do that in all my videos, but that is kind of my passion, playing. And that's what this amp is about. So if that's something that interests you guys, then hang out and watch the video, and I appreciate you watching. Okay, we pulled this one out of its case, and we're going to go over its landscape, its topology. These transformers were pulled from a Heathkit PA, and it was a 6L6. Generally, when I pull transformer pairs out of an amp, I will use the power tubes that it was using. Every time I seem to try and switch up power tubes, I run into problems. I don't know if that's just my inexperience or what. But I usually just, if the amp came and the transformers were running 6L6s or 6V6s or EL84s or EL34s, that's what I'll run the amp around. And so this amp was designed around a Soldano design. You can see it's got the four 12AX7 tubes in here. The main separated, only one half of this is being used, and at the moment I'm still dealing with a microphonic issue with this tube, and the way I have the unused portion of this tube grounded or not, there seems to be a lot of go around about what needs to happen to the stray pins when you only use half of the tube as per the Rob Robinette Soldano design. This is the simplified slow 6L6, and as you can see, these are Hall-Dorson transformers, and being that these transformers are sit so far apart on the chassis, I don't switch them around 90 degrees like people say, and a lot of times the transformers come like this inside the PA heads, and if they did, I just left that design. But if they come any closer than that, generally I do the 90 degree turn to offset the magnetic field. This amp has two Ruby tubes, 6L6s, 4 preamp tubes. I'm running groove tubes in here as much as I can. I think the others are Mullards if they're not microphonic. Don't get me started on microphonic Mullards. Oh my gosh, they are horrible, people. Stay away from Mullards. 1 out of 4 tubes is good if you order 5 or 6. Holy moly. This features the Hammond chassis that you get from Amplified Parts. And these are really cool. I dig this powder coating on here. It's very durable. It looks really neat. And so there's a little shot of what's going on. Here's some of the front. I'll get a better shot just here in a second. I'm just going to kind of give it the little spin around. Features the standard IEC fuse. I'm not doing a B plus fuse on this amp. Regular toggle power, 8 and 16. Just kept it bare bones in the back, you know. Why not? It's simple and stupid. Yeah. So this is definitely a good high gain build. I'm having a little trouble with some noise in this amp. I don't know if it's a ground loop situation. Or I did not elevate the heaters in this amp. And so when this thing starts to really start getting cranky, it has a little bit of a noise. I have a little bit of a sound, a little bit of a buzz coming out of it, a hum. And it's usually like not at first. It's usually once you start cranking down on this amp after a little while and start putting it through some different settings and paces, and all of a sudden you're standing there and it's got this kind of hum going on. And I'm sure the filtration's pretty good in this. And one thing I liked is that I had this raised B plus line coming through here. I thought that was kind of a neat idea. I just, with all of my amps so far, I've just, wung it on the layouts. I just start with an idea and I go and I lay it out and I just do it. And it's not a plan. It's just a clean goal to get something nice. And each one of them has turned out a little bit different. But this one I did think was a cool idea with these power supply leads coming through over the top, staying away from everything coming down the middle, away from the heaters. So we have gain, master volume, bright cap, bass, mid, treble. Here we have a 10K, 4.7K cathode bypass selector switch. Here we have a tone slope selector switch, which is a 33 to 56K, which sets up the tone slope of the tone stack. And over here we have a negative feedback switch, which is I do believe is a 100K and a 56K or it might be a 56 and a 33 selector on the negative feedback, which gives us some depth on this one and gives us some presence on this one. I have a little LED installed right there. Flip it around a little bit. Go over the back of it. Nothing big. Nothing big on the back. But you can see how she looks. I have a artificial center tap going on the heaters on this, and I do believe this actual center tap for the heaters lies in this little cluster here. There's a little green and yellow one popping out, and I think we're going to take a reference on one of these and see, and if so, we're just going to go ahead and try and reuse the little nubbit of wire, get rid of the artificial center tap, and let's introduce some DC elevated heaters. I've got grounding no-nos happening kind of in a few spots. I mean, you can get away with sometimes with a few grounding no-nos here and there. But if you start using grounds willy-nilly all over the amp, you're going to run into ground loops. And that may be part of the problem with this amp. I can see the center tap for the HT lines for the rectifier go right here to a special spot here on the side, which also runs the grounding for the heaters, which should be the power amp, the power side of the grounding. Yet way over here we have grounding going for these filter caps. For the first filter caps is over on this side. So generally we need to bring these two together, I say, and even our cathode grounding. I'm trying to look here. It grounds right here off the tube. Speaker jack is grounding right off the jack. So I've got a lot of grounding that's going off into places where really it shouldn't, and that could be contributing to the noise factor of what I'm getting in this and the loops and such with all that. So we're gonna check it out. We're gonna go through it and see what we get, and if we elevate the heaters, and maybe we can clean up some of this grounding. I don't know. I've got the layout just isn't working as far as some of that goes, but I can run ground wire down along the corner edge of this amp if I need to in a clean fashion, maybe with a little goop to tie it down here and there, and it might be okay. All right. We're going to check for some continuity here. I exposed a little nubbit of what I think is the center tap for the heaters. And let's just see what we get. Oh, just as I thought. So I didn't even need to do an artificial center tap. I could have just used what was here already. Well, so with what's here, we're going to try and reconstruct a little bit into a heater, a DC elevated heater, to try to cut some of the noise. We're going to work on that. We're going to try and bring some of the grounding together into a little bit more of a centralized thing, at least a couple of them. All right, so we're checking out the insides. I got a little ragtag filtration setup in here. Got some mod caps in there and the F&Ts. I've had some mixed reactions hearing from people about mod caps. I haven't had too many problems using them, but you never know. Maybe there's a reason why people talk about stuff like that. I did only use the single bias setup in this particular design. Usually I like to use the balance and bias. And you can see what we're looking at in here, the way I've got some stuff. It looks a little wonky, I suppose. I mean, if you're checking out Luke and Andy's work, yeah, I mean, I got flying wires galore. But it sounds pretty good, and I think my dressing is okay. There's not a lot of noise except for what I was talking about, and I'm not sure if that's just a ground loop or some type of a filter thing. or I'm just not sure. I gotta go over this. And the reason why I have it pulled out actually is because maybe I thought part of that noise could be because I haven't elevated the heaters in this amp, and so I did get some caps to use, and they finally just came in, and I was gonna try and just go ahead and elevate the heaters on all of my amps, and see if some of the ones that are a little bit noisy can do a little better. This amp is actually pretty quiet under a lot of conditions, but you start messing around with it and you start putting it through some different conditions, and it starts to develop a little bit of a hum or a buzz somewhere. And that's why I was saying that maybe there's a ground loop or something going on somewhere. And it's not all the time, because you can get the amp to run really quiet and really stably, really nice, but that's not building a great amp. The idea is that you build them consistently in the way you want to, not that you're just kind of like, you bumble your way through and it works great, then you take it from there type of thing, which is what I do. I think a lot of my earlier conversions sounded decent because I was achieving asymmetrical distortion by mixing up my voltages and getting some voltages wrong and things like that. So I was getting kind of lucky on some of that stuff before I kind of knew what I was doing. But here you could just see what I was, how my layout looks. And I think there's some things in here that can definitely be cleaned up. I see some stuff that's bugging me right off the bat and what I would love to have gone through. But I don't know if it makes sense for me to keep going back and back and back over some of these amps. And, I just kind of learn what I learn and move on to another one. You can see I've got a little mixture of caps, Jupiter and Sozos and whatnots. I think I got an orange drop in there. And we're going to go ahead and try and put in some kind of heater elevation amongst this mess. The heater stuff is always kind of a little bit of a node issue to me that you got to work around. But, I mean, look at that. That don't look so hot. But, hey, man, I'm still learning, and I'm humble, and each amp gets a little bit better. Okay, we're back. So, basically what I did is I removed the artificial center tap, the 200 ohm resistors, from the ground connection here off the heaters, and I reconnected the center tap for the heaters to a little circuit that I made. Grab my pointer here. And you can see here I just installed this little circuit. I don't know what you call these things, these little boards that you get from... I use these, and I just take them and flatten down some of the connectors in them. Little turret boards, I think they're called miniature turret boards. So I took the center tap for the heaters and I connected it here, so it no longer has an artificial 201 ohm, two 100 ohm resistors. It now has the center tap connected to this elevated heater circuit that I put in here, and basically I tapped off the power for the phase inverter and just kind of willy-nilly ran a wire through here. I figured, you know what, flying wires, hey, why not add another? And we ran it in here, and I started with a 470K, and we run into this 22 microfarad cap, and then that branches off to a 56K, which goes to ground, and basically the heater tap circuit is complete. And right now I'm throwing 38 volts of DC onto my heaters, and the Rob Robinette page says it, the one that they build says it's a 64 volt, so I'm not far off that, what, 26 or something like that. And another thing I did is I ran these filter grounding instead of having it grounded over here, which I stated was incorrect. We need to have one central ground. I went ahead and did the long distance wire through here. It seems to be fairly isolated, and once I put some goop in the corners, I think it's going to stay put away from everything else. And it runs all the way around town here to the major ground. And the one last thing that's bugging is the speaker output ground is over here wired to directly to the chassis. So I went ahead and fired it up, checked it out, and it was a lot quieter. Yes, it was. I was very impressed and excited that some of the noise, if not most of it, was gone. And like I said, the problem that I was having was the amp was starting out quiet, But as I started putting it through at some paces and switching and just trying to find some tone, it would start a loop or a hum. And so it would start off great and quiet, and then it would wind up being kind of noisy for some strange reason. And so that's basically what I was chasing. And so I'm going to get it up on a cabinet over here and start cranking it up. And we'll see if it does the same thing again. I'm hoping it doesn't, and I'm hoping the 38 volts is going to be enough. If not, I think the result might be changing this 470K resistor out to maybe a 220 or a 330. And I think that's going to bump our voltage up a little bit. But I was pretty satisfied with the way it was sounding. I'm not sure like how the rule and specs go with DC elevation. And I'm sure something's better than nothing at 38 volts. Like I said, Rob Robinette creates the 64 volt one on his. And I just took the wiring off what I was doing for the Praying Mantis amp. And so that's what I used in here. And it did seem to work. So all right, we're gonna do a little sound check here from the bench with the bench speaker. Cranking up that master volume. So there's really I hear no 60 cycle hum in there anymore, just a slight bit. The master volume's like 70% right now. I don't even want to go there. So I think we got what we were looking for. All right, let's take a quick look at this. In the Rob Robinette Slow Naked 6L6, this is how you do a Soldano out of one of those old PA conversions, because a lot of them are 6L6. Most of them are 6L6. So this is the layout to have. Anyways, but I don't necessarily go by the values. A lot of the values that Rob Robinette uses, in my opinion, for the Soldano build don't really work. They make your amp sound really woofy. Anyway, so let's go take a look at this heater elevation that they have in here. And he's using a 10 microfarad, a 68K, and a 30K. I think that's what that says. And so it's pretty simple. He's just sucking some power right off this node right here. It's coming in, it's hitting that. There's the center tap for the heaters. And there's the little network. Goes off to ground. So it's pretty basic little setup. And you can see here it's a 64 volt heater elevation. And I do believe it's because he's using lower value resistors than I was. Okay, cool. This has been a little video about this amp, which I've been calling the Bloodhorse. I've made some previous videos about it earlier. Some of them involved me bungling up the Tolex job on this amp, but in the end it came out okay. Not the best, but it came out okay. And I wanted to say that once again it is molded after a Soldano, and which is several of my amps. This one, the Roulette, is also. This one I call Divine Justice is, and the Angry Redhead. So 4 amps I've done are based off Soldano, and then 2 of the other ones have been on the Dirty Shirley. This one and this little guy down here. I appreciate you guys hanging out and watching the video about this amp I built, and it's kind of a work in progress. And I'm trying to make it sound as good as I can on the metal side of things, because it is a metal amp. That's how I envisioned it. Surprisingly, though, the cleans through this amp are kind of cool. I hope you guys have a good one, and talk to you soon. Bye.